I did want to play out the very latest comments from President Trump as you were hearing him answering questions pertaining to the Iran war. And this morning he posted this on social media saying for Iran, the clock is ticking. They better get moving fast or there won't be anything left of them. Time is of the essence, signed President Donald J. Trump. We're also following some developing news out of the Middle East right there. And this comes as there was a drone strike that targeted a UAE power plant. A little bit more information on this, all of this happening this Sunday. A drone strike targeted the United Arab Emirates' Seoul nuclear power plant earlier today, sparking a fire on its perimeter. There were no reports of injuries or radiological release, but this did highlight the risk of renewed war as the Iran ceasefire remains tenuous. Now, no one immediately claimed responsibility, and the UAE did not blame anyone. It has, however, accused Iran of launching drone and missile attacks in recent days as tensions rise over the Strait of Hormuz. The vital energy waterway is still being held in control by Iran, which is under a U.S. naval blockade. The UAE has hosted air defenses and personnel from Israel, which joined the U.S. in the February 28th attack that started the war. President Trump has, as we just shared with you, suggested hostilities could resume, and he was expected to speak with Israel's prime minister today. Iranian state television has aired segments with news anchors holding rifles in an effort to prepare the public for war. Diplomatic efforts aimed at a more durable peace have faltered. To talk more on this, I do want to bring in Blaise Misztal, the Vice President for Policy with JINSA. And Blaise, as always, we appreciate you joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Happy Sunday to you, Stephanie. Good to be with you.
So the very latest, President Trump now vowing action against Iran if they do not move quickly. He says time is of the essence. As we take a look at where this all stands with still a tenuous ceasefire in place, how likely is it that the United States could move forward with military action?
I think the simple answer is we don't know, and I think that is what President Trump wants the answer to be, certainly in Tehran. I think keeping everyone guessing and uncertain as to what his next step is going to be is part of his strategy. But it certainly seems like for now, President Trump has decided that there is no deal to be had with Iran. He called what Iran is proposing totally unacceptable just last week. But he also doesn't seem to want to go back to war, at least not right now. And I think in part what he's really hoping is that over time, this blockade that is strangling Iran's ability to export oil is going to weaken the regime financially and force it to either accept a deal that he likes or perhaps over time even collapse entirely. And so I think he's trying to put more time on the clock and have this blockade do the hard work for him.
I did want to ask you, President Trump was in China last week, and one of the major issues on the agenda between President Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping was the Iran war, particularly the Strait of Hormuz, given that China does receive Iranian oil. China agreed that the Strait of Hormuz should be opened, but didn't, clarify beyond that. Where does China factor into the relationship and the negotiation process between the United States and Iran, if at all?
Yeah, well, I think there's two things that President Trump could have asked of China. One is, and perhaps the most important, is to do no harm. We know that China has been involved in resupplying and rearming Iran after previous conflicts. It supplies it with chemicals that are used to make the fuel for its ballistic missiles. It has talked about providing it with more advanced air defense systems. It has supplied it with the shoulder-fired anti-air missiles that was used to down an F-15 during the war. So China has been part of the problem with Iran, and I think part of President Trump's message was, first of all, stop it, do no harm, don't help rearm Iran. And we don't know what the outcome of that was, but hopefully that was positive. The other part of the message was, can you help? Can you put more pressure on Iran diplomatically to make a deal? Can you put more pressure on them to reopen the strait? Can you help in reopening the strait? And it seems like President Trump got at least rhetorical support from Beijing there, saying that the strait should in fact be an open waterway that everyone uses freely, but didn't get much more assistance. But I think that was enough to actually rattle the Iranians who do rely on Chinese help, because we saw just a couple of days ago, the Iranians actually seized a Chinese ship that helps escort Chinese oil out of the region. So that was clearly a signal from Tehran that they didn't like what happened in that meeting between Xi and Trump. They thought the Chinese were backing off of their support, and they were trying to send a message there, which I think is a good thing. We want the Iranians to feel like they are losing support, like they are losing the few friends that they have, that they are more isolated, and that they are running out of options.
And you were talking about assistance. Countries so far, allies and non-allies perhaps, reluctant to actively get involved, stating that this is between the United States and Iran. We were hearing rhetoric from China's president in regards to this. Do you see that changing in any way, shape, or form as the weeks move on? Or do you think ultimately it will solely be between the United States and Iran to figure this out?
Well, let's be clear, it hasn't been and won't be just between the United States and Iran. The U.S. has an incredible partner in this fight in the form of Israel, but it has also had assistance that we are just learning about now from some of its partners in the Gulf. We've just heard in recent weeks, or in recent days, that the UAE, the Saudis, even the Qataris apparently conducted attacks against Iran during the course of the war, and were involved in part of that offensive operation. And so the United States is not doing this alone. I think it's important to point that out. What we are seeing is maybe a shift in what partners are most important to the United States, most willing to be helpful. And we're seeing that our old partnerships in Europe are no longer necessarily relevant to the challenges that we face in the 21st century, and that new partnerships, like what we have with Israel, are arising and taking their place.
You were talking about the very strong partnership between the United States and Israel as they worked in tandem initially, and they continue to do so. In fact, President Trump was expected to speak with Israel's prime minister earlier today. You know, when we take a look at the strategy, with the United States and Israel as they continue to work very closely together, how do you see this evolving, especially as there continues to be a ceasefire, but it looks like right now it's a stalemate?
Yeah, I think there's certainly an important element of coordination happening between the United States and Israel. They, and I'd say the rest of the world, share an interest here, which is preventing a nuclear Iran, making sure that it can't restart its centrifuges, that it can't dig out that enriched uranium that's buried under rubble, that it can't pursue a nuclear weapon. And so it's important that Washington and Jerusalem coordinate on their strategy to do that. Certainly, if there is going to be a return to war, as President Trump's social media posts suggest routinely, then that is another element that needs coordination between these two partners that went into the war together. So I think this is just another element of what we've seen in this alliance between the United States and Israel, checking in, keeping tabs on where they're at, making sure that they're closely aligned and going forward together.
You brought up a really interesting and critical point to make, in that some of the older alliances that the U.S. has had, perhaps with European allies, they've evolved. And now the United States is forging new alliances, very close relationship with Israel. You also mentioned some of the Middle Eastern allies. You know, how do you see this evolving in the coming weeks, and how much of an impact these relationships may have when it comes to shaping the strategy there in the Middle East?
Yeah, I think it's really important for the United States, as we're figuring out what our next steps in this conflict are, to remember that we're not alone in this, that we do have partners, but that there are others who are being affected by this conflict, principally those countries around the Gulf who have been the target of so many Iranian attacks and who are suffering economic harm as a result of the closure of the strait, and that what is at stake is not just what happens in Iran, but what happens in the Gulf region, in the Middle East. And I think there are sort of two visions of that we're seeing play out right now or on the table. On the one hand, what we've seen between not just the partnership of the United States and Israel, but also Israel and the UAE, where we know that Israel has provided some of its most cutting-edge military technology to the UAE, like Iron Dome, like the laser system called Iron Beam, to help defend the UAE. We know that the Israeli and Emirati militaries coordinated on strikes inside of Iran. That could be the future of the Middle East, where the United States is the hub and these Middle Eastern countries are working together to take security into their own hands, to make sure the region is secure and stable, but also working together on economic and technological issues to make the region also more prosperous and develop new technologies that benefit them and benefit us. That's the Middle East that the Abraham Accords promised in 2020, and that's the Middle East that Operation Epic Fury might make possible now. On the other hand, we've seen other Middle Eastern countries advance another vision. You have the Saudis talking about a defense pact with the Qataris and the Pakistanis, and Turkey talking about a non-aggression pact with Iran, where they see the future as actually trying to move away from the United States, where they think they can cut deals and they can be safe by distancing themselves from Washington. And so, as part of the strategy of what happens now, it's really which of those two realities, which of those two visions is going to be the more prominent one after this war ends. And I think that has to be part of the calculation for President Trump as well. How do we make sure that that vision of the Abraham Accords wins at the end of this conflict?
Blaise, before we let you go, is there anything else that you would like to share with our viewers as we continue to follow all of these developments?
Look, I think the thing that I'm most interested in watching, and I think we don't talk enough about, is what is actually happening inside of Iran. What is happening with the regime? What is happening between the regime and the Iranian people? Let's remember how and why this started. This started in January with massive protests, hundreds of thousands of people taking to the streets all across Iran, saying they wanted this regime gone. President Trump promised them help, and that help arrived in the form of Operation Epic Fury, which he started by saying, this is going to be a moment for the Iranian people to take their destiny into their own hands. But we haven't heard him talk about the Iranian people in a long time, and we've seen the regime in Tehran cracking down, executing protesters, beating people, trying to make sure that it has a grip on power when all of this ends. And I think it is important to go back to some of that thinking that President Trump had at the beginning of the year. The solution to this conflict is ultimately going to be delivered by the people of Iran reclaiming their country. And we need to be thinking about everything that we can do to help make that happen.
You bring up a really interesting point because, some of what I had shared just a little bit ago is Iranian state television airing segments with news anchors holding rifles in an effort to prepare the public for war. So as Iran's trying to guide the public in one way, could that actually backfire as we see perhaps the greatest hope in a regime change be that of the people?
Yeah, I think absolutely. There's a lot of commentators here in the U.S. who said that if the United States ever attacked Iran, we would see a rally around the flag attack, that all of the people who were critical of the regime would suddenly say the bigger threat is the United States, and so we need to support the Islamic Republic. We need to all be united. We haven't seen that happen. We haven't seen the Iranians who were on the streets just 3 months ago now say we actually support the regime and we want them to win. But what we also haven't seen is those same Iranians who are on the street feel that they can go back to the streets safely or accomplish anything by going back to the streets. And so that also has to be part of the logic here for President Trump, is how do we get to those conditions where the regime has been weakened enough, and they clearly are weak if they're trying to mobilize the country for war, if they're recruiting child soldiers, which they have been, they've been recruiting kids as young as 12 to go fight for the regime, that's a sign of weakness and desperation. How do we push on that? How do we weaken them further? And how do we get the Iranian people who don't want to live under the boot of this regime, who do want to rise up, who do want their freedom, how do we create the conditions for them to succeed in expressing that demand?
Blaise, as always, we appreciate you joining us here on Live Now from Fox.
Thanks for having me, Stephanie.
We are continuing to follow all of the latest developments. If you're just joining us at this hour, we did want to share with what President Trump posted moments ago, talking about the Iran war, saying for Iran, the clock is ticking and they better get moving fast or there won't be anything left of them. Time is of the essence. Any additional developments, we will bring them to you right here on Live Now from Fox. We'll be right back.